The ability to speak might not make you intelligent, but we're going to try to prove otherwise. This is the Clashing Sabers podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon, and I am here with my co-host. He's the man who's best known for beating the Inquisitors via tickle fight. It's
Davor.
Davor, man, I am so glad to be doing this episode today. We are talking about the newest Star Wars animated show, Maul, Shadow Lord, and you and I, being huge Star Wars animation fans, means this is going to be a great episode as we look at things through the lens of our best and butts, which we'll explain a little bit later in the show. So super excited to have you on tonight. Super excited to sit down and talk about what turned out to be, I think we'll kind of get into this, but an amazing series.
Yeah, I am looking forward to talking about this season. There's a lot to talk about.
There's so much to talk about, and we're not going to be able to cover it all. So there will be more Maul Shadow Lord stuff coming out on the network, whether that is through articles on our website. I put out one every week the show came out, just analyzing the episodes. If you guys want to go back and look at those, we'll have Sith Talk. We'll be making its return, and we'll be talking about some of that. But it's a big month for Star Wars.
It really is.
Yeah, May the 4th, we had Celebration tickets go on sale. We've got Mando and Grogu. Like, we had to schedule an extra recording because we didn't have enough time to do our Maul Best and Butts and our Mando preview Best and Butts. So, jam-packed Star Wars stuff this time of year. It feels really good that we're getting great Star Wars content right now. Like, all indications are, Maul, great. Mando and Grogu, looks like it's going to be just a really good time. So a lot to look forward to this month in Star Wars. But as of right now, what have you been Star Warsing
lately? So I've started reading the Servants of the Empire books.
Is that the Rebels ones?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, those have just been kind of on my TBR for the longest time. Again, as a huge Rebels fan, I was like, oh yeah, those books, like I want to read them at some time, like eventually. And so this year I finally decided, like, okay, I'm going to finally read them. And so I've done the first book. They're not very long because they're essentially like, I guess, middle grade, probably.
Yeah,
I think
junior novels, yeah.
Yeah, junior novel, yeah, something like that. So I've done the first one, and I'm about halfway through the second, and I'm really enjoying them. They're good.
I remember reading the first one. I had a couple copies in my classroom library. I don't know if I made it past that. Maybe I'll have to revisit those. Yeah, with Zer Leonis and everything like that, and then the hunt for his sisters.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't remember, in Rebels, like, Zer kind of goes off to go hunt for his lost sister, and that's what these books kind of are about. The middle grades had an era where they were doing some real, like, actually unique content, and not just retellings and stuff, kind of like they do now. There was what was it called? Tales from Wild Space or something like that was published in the UK.
Yeah. Adventures from Wild Space.
Adventures from Wild Space or something like that. Yeah. Those were really good. We got the Servants of the Empire. There's a Ezra and Bosk book out there that is a really good time. So that's a lot of fun. I'm still working through Low Red Moon. It is my most chaotic time of year, so reading time has been a little bit limited. But I'm enjoying the journey so far. It's been a good time. And I'm also in prep for a little movie that's coming out later this month, rewatching this show called The Mandalorian.
Cool.
I don't know if you've heard of this show before. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
I've heard some things about it.
Yeah, going back and looking at season 1, it's just every time I rewatch it, I'm reminded about how good season 1 of that show is. People talk about how great season 2 is, and it's amazing. I just watched The Heiress before our recording and was reminded about how great that is, and just the Mandalorians walking down the hallway, just destroying stormtroopers left and right. Great stuff. But the tight story that is season 1, I think gets lost in the conversation of, well, season 2 is great and season 3 is mid. Y'all, season 1 is fire.
Yeah, I don't think we appreciated season 1 enough when we had it. You know, there was I remember like when it was airing. Obviously, like people had largely positive reactions to it, but I do remember people talking about like, oh, it's like sort of adventure of the week, and he's like going like every episode he's just doing another job, and it's like what's the bigger story? Where's this going, and all of that. But like there's now I almost have a little bit of nostalgia for that time before he sort of like became this kind of like center point in the web of like giant Star Wars. You know, like there's almost something nostalgic about like this one season where it really was just like him and Grogu, and like they're just, you know, bouncing around planets, you know, doing stuff.
Yeah, before you brought in, you know, Bo-Katan and Ahsoka and Boba Fett and Luke and everybody that comes in season 2. Like season 1 is adventure of the week, season 2 is cameo of the week. You know,
a little bit.
Little bit. So what is like your, you know, favorite aspect, and we'll get into this more in the next episode, but what's your favorite aspect of like the Mandalorian, the series first and then maybe the character second?
Okay, the series first. Let me see, I'm trying to think. I think the series for the series, I think it's definitely, and this is I think a big part of why I think season 2 is so strong, is like getting to see sort of like the Mandalorians and like where they are at this point of the galaxy, and then like the way that they're sort of like dealing with their own identity, because obviously there's the whole thing about like the helmet, and like if you're taking it off then you're not real Mandalorian, but then he's sort of like meeting all these people. So I think it's really interesting. I mean, this kind of bleeds over, I think, into your second question about the Mandalorian, the character, is getting to see that journey of him going from this, you know, being in this really small group and having this very kind of narrow mindset about like what it means to be a Mandalorian, how you're supposed to live your life, and then him going on this whole journey and meeting all these people and having his perspective kind of widen.
Yeah, and I think also that's kind of the journey that the Star Wars fan went on with the series, right? Because we spent a lot of time going, well, wait a minute, we've seen Mandalorians with their helmets off. What does this mean? And then we learn, and we slowly get open to this wider world of what it means to be a Mandalorian, which, you know, started back in the Clone Wars with like, oh, Mandalorians can be warriors, they can be pacifists, right? Mandalorians, in their need to like label things, has really helped us see like the depth and breadth of humanity, right? Where there's so many different iterations of what it means to be an American, or what it means to be a world citizen, to what it means, you know, like any community you're a part of, like there's so many interpretations of what that can mean. And I think that that's really something interesting that the Mandalorian culture, as we've added more to it over the years, has really brought to the fore. So it's been a really interesting journey. I've got the Siege coming up next. I've got Ahsoka coming up next. So I'm really looking forward to that. What's your favorite cameo from the Mandalorian?
Oh, favorite character who shows up. Let me see. I'm trying to think. I'm now trying to go through all of them in my head.
There's so many. There's so many. And there's no bad ones. There's none that you're like, that was not great.
I think I'm probably gonna go with Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Just because I think just the way that he gets used in the show so well, that like it really was this like change for I think so many people, like who had this feeling of like, oh, he's just this like cool looking background character, but he doesn't do anything, and then he wipes out in the Sarlacc like a loser. But then the way that they bring him into the show, and then you get, I don't remember now the name of the episode, but it's the one where they go to Tython.
Yeah.
Sure, yes. Yeah, but then like that whole scene where he sort of like goes on the attack against the stormtroopers and all of that, like that just was just like whole sea change. Like so many people had their like perspectives on Boba change.
Yours truly, right here.
Yeah.
You know, it was a big game changer, and just it's so interesting to me the way Star Wars has lined up, where you have in so many cases the actor ends up the exact age you need them to be perfect. Like to hire Ian McDermott and then later have him be able to play. It's just it's peak. It's peak,
yes.
right? Like, okay, cool. You know, the sequels are coming out 30 years later than the original trilogy. We'll just make it 30 years after, right? If it had been 20 years, they would have made it 20 years. But to have Tamara Morrison.
Yeah, I'm now blanking on his Joel Edgerton. Like, you cast this guy to be Owen, and then you're gonna do the Obi-Wan show. Like, oh, he's now like 40-year-old Owen. Like, there you go. Just come on the back.
Yeah, this bit role that you just cast him as. It works so perfectly. And I mean, it gets me thinking, you know, we've got a younger version of Han that's been cast, right? Mm-hmm. We know we can pull Luke off in CGI. We know Billie Lourd played Leia in Rise of Skywalker for just a minute, but she did it. Do you ever think there's a world where we get those three on screen again together in those iterations?
It's so hard. I'm not sure. I sort of feel like, mainly maybe this is just like a Kathleen Kennedy thing. I'm thinking about her, like the interview that she did after her retirement announcement. But like, I feel like they all kind of like learned a little bit of the wrong lesson from Solo and all of that.
They learned a lot of wrong lessons.
Yeah. Like I think they're. I think they have this, like, I feel like there's this attitude that, like, oh yeah, you can't redo, like, you can't like replace Harrison. And on some level, like, you can't, like, there's a statement of truth in there, but also like you can get pretty darn close. You know, like, that's still not an excuse to not try. So like, I don't know if they're gonna, like, I don't know if they have the appetite to pull at that again.
Yeah, that's my thing. I don't think they have the appetite for it. I think our best chance is in animation, because then, you know, you can have you know, who played Han in Solo? I'm blanking on his name now. Alden Ehrenreich. Yeah, you can have Alden Ehrenreich do the Han, you know, so he sounds like a younger Han. You can have Billie Lourd do Leia, and then you can have Mark Hamill still do Luke, you know, and you can have him be the title character, and Mark Hamill returns as Luke in animated form. There was an interesting thing on Disney Plus. I saw just a screen grab of this, so I don't know if it's still up there if you guys are listening and you go check it out now. But on May the 4th, on the Tales of page, there was an animated Luke when you go onto like the Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire. So I don't know. I don't want to say conspiracy theory. I'm wearing a Spurs hat, not a tinfoil hat, but we might be getting animated Luke. So if we get animated Luke, what do you want to see? Do you want his own show? Do you want him to make an appearance in another show? Do you want a Tales of Luke Skywalker? Like, what would be your dream animation Luke Skywalker project?
Ooh, I have not thought about this. Let me see. I think it would be cool to get some kind of like Jedi Academy Luke.
Yeah.
Like getting to see him a little bit, kind of training up that next generation pre, you know, the whole Ben disaster. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, and there's all that time leading up to that where he's hunting for Jedi lore and memorabilia and history. So I think kind of a adventure of the week serial where each time, you know, or each 3-episode arc or whatever, he's going and looking for a different thing, and then that leads into the Jedi Academy. I think could be really cool. You know, that's a series you can run for ages, and continue going. You know, it's Mark. You can have Mark Hamill do it for a while until he doesn't want to do it anymore, or his time is up, and then you move on. You find another voice actor to be able to do it. But man, if there was ever a time to do it, the time is now, because animation has been on fire. It's been the one stalwart of the Disney era of Star Wars lately. Resistance was a little bit of a hiccup, but even for some fans it hit. But one thing that kind of hit for everybody was Maul Shadow Lord. So I think it's about time we get into talking about this amazing new show that we've got through our Best and Butts format. So for those of you who haven't listened before or haven't listened in a while, when we do Best and Butts, it's a look at the less than stellar aspects of something and the really great aspects of something in an effort to kind of critique things as we go along, both positively and negatively. So our butts are two things that we thought that could have been done better or could have been improved. And then our best is your usual, these are the best aspects of something. So Davor, do you want to start this time or you want me to go?
I can start.
Okay, so we'll start with our butts. So our butt number 2, and Davor, I'm going to let you go ahead.
All right, my butt number 2. For me, when I look back at the season, I think the 2/5 of the season where the show is the crime noir drama is, to me, stronger overall than the 3/5 when it's not that. So we kind of talked about this a little bit in our preview episode when we were talking about kind of like what we were looking forward to and what our impressions of the show based on the trailers. And I think like those first 4 episodes, it's not to say there isn't like good compelling stuff that happens in the last 6. I'm not saying that at all, because there definitely is. There's great stuff in there and there's great storytelling in there. But there's those first 4 episodes when we were like when the story really is just kind of Janix based, and you have Lawson and he's kind of on the trail of Maul, and then you have Maul with his kind of machinations with like the hikes and everybody else and all of that. Like that really like it did really feel like we were like cracking into a new side, both kind of in universe in the galaxy, like a corner of the galaxy that we hadn't seen, like the underworld in this particular place in this particular time, and then within the kind of in our world in terms of like the kind of storytelling that we've gotten, particularly storytelling on the screen. Like it felt like, oh, okay, this really feels like we're kind of outside the box a little bit, like it feels sort of refreshing in that way. And then when you have the pivot into the Empire shows up again, it's not that there isn't compelling stuff that happens there. It's not the case that there isn't like new or different stuff that happens there. I think like in particular, like bringing in the Empire into the ecosystem of Janix, like with these characters and what they're doing, like, and the way that kind of upsets everything and forces everybody to kind of recalculate and redraw alliances, all that, like all that's really interesting, and it is of a kind of story that we haven't gotten before. But then it does like it fits into these. Empire shows up, then Inquisitors show up. Inquisitors are bad at their job, so then Vader has to show up, and they're still a little bit like we're now outside of the box, but we're kind of pressed right up against the edge of it. Like we're right up against the surface of the box. So yeah, that's just my feel. I mean, like I think maybe looking ahead to season 2, probably we will. I imagine we're going to shift more towards what the front half of the season 1 looked like.
Yeah, I would think so.
I don't think we're going to see Inquisitors again. I don't think we're going to see Vader again. Like, I think we're probably going to move from that and really go into, like, lean hard on the shadow, of Shadow Lord, like, really kind of go into the underworld aspect of it. So I do look forward to that. Yeah, that's just sort of, again, that's sort of just a preference thing for me.
Yeah, and I do feel like we're going to get, like, Inquisitors and stuff, because the season ends with Devin saying that she's ready, right? And she's ready for revenge, right? And so I do think we'll get some of that, especially like some where Maul has to kind of like hold her back from wanting to get revenge when she's not prepared for the kind of revenge that they're trying to get. And he's going to want to build up this, Crimson Dawn, build up the Shadow Collective. He's got to at some point kill off the leader of Crimson Dawn and take that over and usurp Dryden Voss, all of that stuff. So all of that's going to come into play in season 2 of things. So I think maybe we'll, towards the end of the season again, get some Inquisitors and stuff. Vader, I mean, I don't know if we get Vader in the series again.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Like, it's both. It's one of those things where it's challenging to do it, but it's also challenging not to, right? Because if you do it, how do you do it without making him seem like he's bad at his job, right? And still make him the intimidating villain that you need him to be. And then in the flip side of things, if you do it too often, it kind of takes away from it. So, I mean, it's really like, this is just an aside, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, throughout. But the Vader stuff was just so good. It's almost hard to even want you to add more to it. You know, it's like, it's a complete album. Like, don't you had your perfect album. Don't make another one. You know,
right. Yeah.
Don't ruin it. So yeah, it's kind of hard in that regard. For me, my butt number 2 is this is a big one. It really took away from the show for me. It's Dryden Voss's voice.
It's not Paul Bettany.
It doesn't sound like Paul Bettany at all.
No, it really does not sound like Paul Bettany.
And here's the thing. I loved this show. I loved this show so much. It was everything I wanted it to be and more. So finding my butts was really challenging, because even in the things that you talked about where it's kind of hitting repeat elements, I felt like it was doing it in new ways and pushing the characters in directions we hadn't seen characters go before. And so that element of things I was fine. And it's that point in the timeline where, granted, we are kind of stuck, you know, the rise of the Empire into the original trilogy era. But given the parameters it was in, I felt like it did everything to perfection. So I'm literally having to pick to knit, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it was really hard. So I went with, after watching the finale episodes, I kind of went with my gut, and I was like, that just really, it took me out of the episodes for a minute, and it almost made it comical, where like I wanted to laugh at how not close to Paul Bettany the voice was. Like, and I'm cool with them not completely trying to replicate the voice, but like, it feels so different, it just takes you out. So it's dumb, it's ridiculous, it's stupid, it shouldn't bother me at all, but it's my butt number 2, so there you have it.
No, that's valid. I mean, like, it's so challenging, the situation, and especially like with that character. Like, one, it can be, you know, like having that difference of the voice or something change can kind of take you a little bit out of it, and then but also like in particular, like Paul Bettany brings such a like personality to that role. Like I so often think about in Solo his like when they all go off to the mission to get the coaxium, like his delivery of like, we'll all be out of options, you know, like like that moment, like he has this very like this way where he's like a little bit kind of like you know, sort of like laid back or whatever, or you know, or like trying to like buddy you up, but then it's like you just know like he can turn on like the instant if you say the wrong thing. And yeah, like I don't know that you can necessarily deliver that with another person. Or like, I mean, like he's also maybe like he's not the same Dryden in this moment that he is, you know, I don't know, what is it, 10 years later, however much time.
That's fair.
But yeah, but no, I totally respect that. Yeah, I think like when he was first on there, I started listening immediately. I'm like, is this Paul Bettany? I'm like,
no. Yeah. Which I'd be interested to see if they even called Paul Bettany, you know?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you know, we're doing this character. Do you want to be a part of it? They definitely, if they didn't, or regardless of whether they did or they didn't, what ended up being is they didn't try to cast somebody who was just going to try to mimic him. And I think my issue with it overall is that with Dryden in the movies, like you said, there's that particular cadence and everything like that. And this just sounds like some generic dude you just hired.
Yeah, it does.
There's no character. Like, take the character in a different direction, fine. But give me some character. Give me some pizzazz to it. And this is just... And it's hard because I know we're getting more Dryden in season 2. Like, we have to at this point.
Yes.
So we're kind of stuck with it. So that's that. What was your most egregious thing about Maul Shadow Lord?
Okay, so the thing that I had the hardest time with and that like didn't quite sort of land for me are the Jedi characters.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as both a unit and a little bit individually on each one of them, I think I can maybe talk about a little bit individual. I think mainly on the individual level, it mostly sort of like leans Devin, but then there's sort of some more stuff about like them as master and apprentice. I guess I'll start with the Devin of it all. It's like I wanted to connect with her more than I did, and I'm so sort of like just at a personal like a little bit disappointed. Because like I feel like with other animated shows where we have our sort of like younger character who sort of are sort of our eyes in a little bit. Like I felt that like whether it's like Ezra, whether it's Ahsoka, whether it's Omega, like there is that connection. The thing I concede and I recognize as part of the point with Devin in particular is like she's in a different place than particular a lot of these other characters. I think she's a lot more closed off in the sense of like she's sort of closer to where we find, for example, Ezra at the beginning of season 1, but I think she's even farther down the spectrum for where he is. Like they both have that sort of same element of like they've gone through this sort of like trauma, this bad stuff that has happened to them, and then they have a sort of defense mechanism of keeping people out. But I think Devin has a much stronger version of that, even at the beginning of the season, than like Ezra does when we meet him at the beginning of Rebels. And so I understand that, like with her, like part of the point is that she does is like she is meant to feel kind of distant from you. Like she's meant to feel like not opening and welcoming or very trusting or anything. Like very different, like Omega on the other end of the spectrum, right, or something like that. Right. It's sort of like the anti-Omega. But just like in terms of the way that I ended up engaging with the character, like that ended up having the effect of like I wasn't feeling that sort of like connection with her and like really feeling invested in terms of like the stakes of her character and where she was going and the choices that she was making. And then like to kind of bring in the Dacia of it all and the two of them, like I just feel like with both of them, it sort of feels like we get the part of the story of them and their relationship that we see on screen in this episode, but it also feels like there's so much more that I want to know and find about about them to get the kind of complete arc of like how they got there, what was their relationship before. It's a little bit like not dissimilar to like Ahsoka and Sabine in season 1 of Ahsoka, where it's like you're meeting them at one point in their relationship, and there's like stuff that happens before that, and you're like, I kind of want to know the stuff before that so that I know why they're here, and then it adds greater weight to where they ultimately end up at the end. So I had a little bit of that same feeling that I had when I was watching that show, where I was like, man, I want like as much as I sometimes like don't like when they do flashbacks, like I just want like a little bit of like what were they doing in the Clone Wars, like what were like how did they end up like once Order 66 went down, like how did they end up like just to get a little bit of like, okay, here's where they were, here's where they are now, and then that ultimately informing where they end up by the time we get to the end of season 1.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that there's a real lack of development for Daki in particular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Devin, obviously, there's development in her starting to turn to the dark side and everything of that nature, which I thought was done particularly well. I thought that I really enjoyed that journey, but the relationship between the two, they don't even give us like with Sabine and Ahsoka, they give us like these little tidbits where you're like, wait, what does that mean? And what's that story?
Right.
There's none of that here. Because what I was thinking about as you were talking was, I never thought about that at all. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I don't think it's necessarily a good thing as far as my investment in the characters go, because out of all the characters in the show, these are the two I'm probably the least invested in.
Yeah.
And with Devin in particular, that's a problem, right?
Yes.
When you look at shows like Rebels, like Bad Batch, like you get connected with those characters pretty quickly. Like even Ezra with the whole Aladdin, situation, you still connect with him pretty well because his humor is there and everything. Devin is very much like, okay, where she's going to end up, and they're not really hiding, that aspect of it. So they kind of are like, well, you're just going to wait for her to get there. So we'll just like kind of make her generic to start with. And So that kind of honestly leads into my number one, which is I don't think this show had enough time.
Yeah. No, it did not.
Like, this show deserved 12 to 16 episodes just to let the slow burn happen to a greater extent. Because kind of like you said in your number two, it's not that the show is bad at any point.
No.
Right?
No.
But it's so good that it can be better.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we had more time to develop these relationships and show the struggles and everything, you know, especially like the one that I would have loved to see that I thought could have added a lot of depth to the story was Lawson and his son. You know, like we have so many father-son stories in Star Wars, right? In terms of like adoptive fathers and sons and stuff. But this is like a legit like single dad working a job, like trying to do his best, doing a really piss poor job of it, you know, and like what happens. And then we just get this quick moment in the end. You know, we have, you know, these moments of Riley saying, "Oh, this is the most time we spent together in a while," and things of that nature. But if we had spent, you know, 5 episodes, 6 episodes, 7 episodes with their tension really building between Maul and Devin, like that is kind of like I showed it to you once, I showed it to you twice, now we've got the turn, right? Yeah. And just to get more of that, to build up Daki and Devin's relationship and their history more, to make the loss of Daki feel more powerful. Like,
yes,
the one thing that falls under this category that really bothered me is I didn't feel much when Daki died.
Yeah, and same, and then also this sort of feeds to your point about like making like the value add of making the show a little bit longer. Like it would have also added potentially a little bit more weight to the call that we get at the end of the show, because there's a lot of those like the kind of like Maul side characters, like the other Death and like the other Zabraks, and like we don't spend any real time with them, and so like when you have the like them either getting killed or sacrificing themselves, like it rings a little bit hollow. It's like I don't know anything about this guy, like other than he's the same species as Maul, so I kind of understand why like Maul feels a kinship to him.
Well, it's so funny too, because like watching the one with the mask's name is Icarus. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah.
So obviously, y'all, Icarus flew too close to the sun, all of that stuff, right? So I was like, oh, they gave him this cool name, Icarus. Like he's gonna have this great storyline. And I literally go after when he died, I go, well, I guess I'm glad I didn't buy the Funko of him because he wasn't very memorable. Those are my exact words. So yeah, it was. But there's so many moments of that, and you know, like even if you get more episodes, you can add more to those Mandalorians, you know, the side Mandalorians, right? You kind of just get this quick moment with them. So again, it's one of those situations where it's so good that I want more of it. It kind of goes to what Lindsay and I talked about with Master of Evil, where we were like, the Vader stuff is so good, we want more of it, right? To really flesh that book out. That's what we were talking about here. We just need more of the good stuff. And so maybe, you know, season 2 is in development. Maybe there's multiple versions of season 2 where it's like, oh, this thing was a hit. Okay, cool. You guys got 16 episodes now.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that's a thing that happens, but that would be really cool if we get more episodes in season 2, because this show really was a smash hit. And I think that, you know, everything is showing that, you know, the ratings are through the roof. It's the highest rated Star Wars show on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. Like the viewership is through the roof. So people are really getting into the show. Like Jon Favreau was talking about it on the red carpet of The Mandalorian and Grogu. Like it's a huge deal. And so to get more of it, I think would be great. And I just kind of wish we had more in season 1. I really enjoyed everything we had, and that which wasn't flushed out, the Devin and Maul, the Devin and Daki, like all of that stuff is not stuff where I go, I don't care about it. Like I want more of that. Like I'm hungering for more of that, which I think is a statement really about how good the show is. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get into the really good stuff, which is our best. And Davor, I'll let you start with your best number 2.
All right, so my best number 2, I'm giving broadly to Aura.
So, okay.
Yeah, aura. And so that encompasses, I think, like a number of things about this show that I think are done really well. I think just like the way that the show just kind of leans into this kind of darker in tone storytelling, I think is just really, really good. Like if you look at, you know, the music, what the Kiners do in terms of like that to kind of set the mood. The animation style when we get the fights. I mean, like there's part of me that's like I could use like 20% more of like the Shadow Lord style animation, like those moments when it's whether it's like the way that the lightsabers go, or when you get the close-ups of Maul's face and he almost looks sort of like it almost looks like brushstroke effect. And you're like, oh, like I want like everybody to have like a little bit, like crank the dial just a little bit more like on that. But then even like the Inquisitors, where like yes, like as I talked about my bottom, like yeah, they again stereotypically suck at their job, but like they're also terrifying on the show at the same time, right? Like whether you know whether it's like individually, like when you just get Marok in that first episode and he's kind of like going around and he's like sensing all the places where they were, or but even when they're like together, like there's such genuine like menace, and you genuinely like feel this fear of like oh like these guys are coming and like they're this threat. So I think all of that is just, and again that comes from like multiple different points of like the animations and like shadow and lighting and music and like the way all of that comes together, I think is just done so effectively, and I think really feeds into and informs like the story that they're telling.
Yeah, there's no wasted motion here, right?
Yeah.
Everything that is done has a purpose. Even I look at the lightsaber duels, and every motion in there has a purpose. You know, it's telling a story through those duels, and every appearance, every action, every, like you said, brushstroke has a purpose. And I think maybe they will lean into it more now that, you know, they have more time, or, you know, they're telling more story. Because something that Sam Witwer talked about that really stood out to me was like, this show is being seen through Maul's perspective, right? And so as Maul is getting and developing, maybe the art style will develop a little bit more as well along with it. So there's so much potential to do that, but Aura is such a great way to look at it, because they really made all the characters feel exactly how you needed them to feel. Like they turned the dial up, as you said, with Maul, for example. Like he feels intimidating, as he should. You know, the Inquisitors feel like demons, you know, behind those masks. Like they, even though they fail at their jobs, like they almost defeated Maul, you know, like that's no small feat. So just the development around all of it, and it leads perfectly into my number 2, which is we got Vader, baby. Like, and it's not that we got Vader. It's not that we got the Vader Maul duel that we've all always wanted, and it was great and everything like that. It was actually like the little things that they did with him, like for example, not giving him any dialogue.
Incredible decision.
So good, especially because look, we've got Disney, we know they like the AI, all of that stuff, right? And we've got the permission from James Earl Jones to use the AI voice and everything. We still have James Earl Jones who could have come back. Like there's so many reasons to give Vader speaking lines, right? Nothing. He is just pure darkness and power and brutality. I loved how they spoke to his strength in the duel of having him fight with one hand. Like he could have used his other hand. He very rarely is using his other hand, his left hand, for anything. He's just fighting single-handedly 3 opponents at the same time. Like that's insane. It's absolutely insane. Everything about it, the music surrounding him was absolutely amazing, which, as an aside, you know, going back to your aura points, freaking the music of this thing is, I can't stop listening to it. It's so good. It's everything that I wanted it to be. Very haunting, full of just so much power and depth in the notes that they use. Again, no wasted motion in the music. That was really powerful. But Vader's just pure power here. Again, it's easy to oversaturate with somebody as great as Vader, and that draws as many eyeballs as Vader. It's great to bring him in and just have him be in there just with so much such an overdose of attention where it loses the fidelity of his character. And one thing, look, I love Dave Filoni. Y'all know I love Dave Filoni, even though I've had some problems with him, in some of the stories he's told lately. Like, one thing he does really, really well is handle Darth Vader. He did it well in Rebels. He's doing it well in Maul Shadow Lord. So I just overall absolutely loved everything that they did with Vader. And that reveal of the title in episode 10, the Dark Lord. From there, honestly, from the end of episode 9, where you hear the breath, through to the end in his last moments on screen, everything absolutely worked to pure perfection, and I could not have been more satisfied.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think, yeah, he's such a challenging character to bring in because he is such a black hole of attention.
Mm-hmm.
It so easily becomes about him being there, and so using him well is always a challenge. And I think the decision, the restraint, as we talked about, right, to not have him talk and have everything be just shown through the way that he is fighting, the jump scare where his hand comes through the brick wall worked for me, absolutely. And I was sitting there and I was like, whoa, I actually it was very effective. And yeah, his sort of introduction where he just sucks Cass back into the forest was just absolutely terrifying. And yeah, I think it was a great example of doing all your storytelling through just physicality, rather than having him trade quips with Maul or something, which you could easily, which would be the easy thing to do. But
it would have been so easy.
Yeah, but this is the much more sort of sophisticated version to tell the exact same story.
Yeah, and there's, even within that, there's that moment where Maul is like, "What are you?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
Where that's a perfect line for Vader to say something like, "What you never could be," or something.
Yeah.
Something like that. And it to us, we know Maul, we know Vader, and Maul was raised as a Sith and Vader wasn't, and we could understand if there's some element of Vader feeling like he needs to prove himself to Maul. You could see a version of that story, but they saw what the real story is, which is Vader doesn't need to prove himself to anybody. Right? He's Darth freaking Vader, right? That's the attitude that he has, right? The only person he bows before is Palpatine. And time and again, we've been shown Maul ain't no Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and for the character of Maul too, just the way that he relates to Vader is so interesting, because you have this guy who should be able to recognize a Sith on sight, and he can't, because Vader is something so different than what the Sith have been before, right? And just in terms of what we've seen, even Palpatine is not as brutal as Vader. He's more manipulative, right? Vader is just pure brutality. And so that's really powerful. And then I saw this online today, and it really got me thinking. There's that moment in Clone Wars where Ahsoka and Maul are dueling, and Ahsoka says, "You're lucky Anakin didn't show up because you wouldn't have stood a chance." Well, he didn't stand a chance, because Vader is a leveled up version of Anakin, and this really shows that through the lightsaber duels, which, again, y'all know I love storytelling through combat. I think that they just really excelled at that in this show overall. The duels between Maul and the Inquisitors did great work. And then of course the duels here did really good work. So not something that I will stop thinking about for a very, very long time. But Davor, what is your number one thing about Shadow Lord?
I think my number one my number one thing about Shadow Lord, season 1 of Shadow Lord, I should say,
Yeah,
is the themes that the season gets into, like particularly around like alliances and like how do you respond in this like sort of new era with like these new players in the Empire, which like again on some level like we've had like Bad Batch is a little bit of that, where it's like a sort of like, okay, now the Republic is now the Empire, what do these clones do? But like and like a lot of early Empire storytelling that we've gotten in these like first couple of years, after Revenge of the Sith is a little bit like that. Like, okay, the galaxy's now really changed. What's my place now? What do I do, and so on. But I think in this show, because everything is kind of being filtered through Maul, like I think it takes some really interesting places. Like, there is the element of like, as I talked about, of like alliances, like the show asking this question of like, is the enemy of my enemy my friend? Like that's the proposition in a lot of ways that Maul is offering to Devin, and a lot of the season is about like her and Daki and like the Lawsons also, like sort of like all these characters kind of wrestling with that question. But then also like I think is it an episode? I think it's in the third episode when he sort of starts doing his first like real effort at like tempting Devin to the dark side. And like he has this whole like conversation about like, well, like you're a Jedi, you have these abilities, and like how can you just sort of like cower in the corners and not do anything? Like you're just sort of wasting your life, and like you're wasting this opportunity that you have. It's like you can do these things. And it's so interesting to get that coming out of Maul, because like in some ways it's a message that Star Wars has tells in a lot of its stories. Like there's a lot of the moral of like, if you can do something, you should do something. If you can say something, you should. Like it echoes a little bit of the very beginning of Rebels, that speech that Hera gives to Ezra about like, if you're just living for yourself and like not doing, then like what values your life, or what that's a paraphrase.
Yeah.
Like, she says that a lot better. Like it's very similar to that, but because it's like shot through the prism of Maul, like it has this totally different valence. But it is like, again, it's like it's so interesting and so compelling, and like it becomes that little bit of source of obviously friction between her and Daki. And I think like their best moment, I think, in this season, I already talked about them as like as a butt and what more I want in a relationship with, but the best moment that I love with them is, I think it's when they're going to the train station and they're having a conversation. Then Daki has this line about like, tyrannies always fall, like something to that effect. He says something like that. That's a little bit of a paraphrase, and it was such an interesting line, because it's like, again, it's sort of like it's a little bit of the sort of like classic Star Wars message of like, the bad guys eventually falling and stuff. But like, again, in the context of this show and like refracted through these characters in the situation, like it has almost this sort of like passive feeling, where it's like he's almost sort of presenting this position of like, like just wait, like sit it out, like it'll come down eventually, like it always does, like it has in the past, and it's going to again, right? Like that like MLK line about like the the arc of the universe bending towards justice, right? Like it's a very sort of similar thing that he's getting to, versus like what Devin is sort of feeling, and what pull she's feeling, what Maul is presenting her, being like no, you actually have to like do things. Like you actually have to like go out there and like use like the talents and the skills and like your abilities that you have, like to actually like affirmatively bring it down. Again, like there's a lot of storytelling in Star Wars about like not sitting on the sidelines and being active and like and whatnot. But like, again, like the way that like it goes through the like graduate of the Darth Sidious school of half truths, Darth Maul. It's like it's so interesting. And so I think I love all of that sort of like thematic work that the show is doing about like, what's your responsibility, like what should you be doing in the face of like this grand machine and this grand enemy, and like what are you willing, like what like values or stances are you willing to give up? Who are you willing to ally yourself with in the name of fighting this greater threat? I think it's so interesting, and the show does it really well.
It does, yeah, it does that to a T. And what I think I got from in between the lines of what you're saying, and I really agree with, is this doesn't do anything new. It does everything slightly different, right? Like there's all these Star Wars themes that come up, and it's just telling them through a slightly different angle, because this is through a different time, right? And this is through the lens of Darth Maul, right? Everything's got that red and black filter going over it, if you will. And I think that that's really powerful. And even having, there were lines throughout that really got you thinking. The tyranny one that you talked about really gets you thinking of, like, well, yeah, I know this one's gonna fall. Oh wait, the First Order also falls. Will the next thing fall that comes after the First Order? Will, in our world, the struggles that we're seeing fall? But there's a line in, I think it might be the second or third episode, where Maul just blatantly says that, you were indoctrinated by the Jedi, right? There's a line where Maul is talking to Devin during the fight, and he goes, "You have no hope." And he says it in a way of like, that's what you're lacking. You need hope. And I'm like, did Maul just become a proponent for hope for something? But it's like, well, yes, but no, because like he wants hope for revenge, right? He want, and all of these things. So there's so many different little twists on what normally is Star Wars, because we actually went fully into telling the story through the Darksider's point of view. And that's not something that, going back to the book I mentioned earlier, Master of Evil, like that was one of my big complaints with that book, is we didn't tell enough through Vader's perspective. Like, we're too afraid to tell things from the villain's perspective. It's always like the fallen hero's perspective. It's not the actual villain's perspective. This, we're getting it from a bad guy's point of view, and so it filters everything. And it just was really powerful. And then to add depth to the character the way that they did, I thought was really good, which leads into my number one, which I just called the single tear heard round the galaxy. Really, Maul's entire Force Vision scene was extremely powerful to me. We've gotten so many Force Visions and dreams and things in Star Wars that it gets hard to top what we've had before, or to do something new or different. But they did that through this. And one little note that I liked that I saw Sam Witwer talk about was he actually does the voice of all the characters in that particular scene. Because they're all different from the original scenes, because it's Maul's perspective, right? And so that creates the reality. But when you build it up and you get to this point where we have that single tear coming down, and he apologizes to his younger self and says, "I'm sorry. And I will never let him do this to anybody ever again." Again, going to your idea of putting a little twist on everything that Star Wars normally gives us, right? Any other character in Star Wars saying, "I'm never going to let him do this to anybody again," is going to be, "I'm going to protect people from him." For Maul, it's, "I'm going to take him down."
Yes.
Right? I'm going to get my revenge. And so, once again, I've got to bring it up, but Maul is Sisyphus, right? Like, we go back to that all the time. We talk about it all the time. But he can't actually learn the lesson he needs to learn, which is let go of the anger and hate. That's what's causing all of this pain. That's your through line. It's, no, I'm going to blame Sidious. And then we get that "I'm sorry," and then it's, "I'm going to get revenge." He digs his feet in and continues his resolve for revenge. He leans even harder into taking risks to recruit Devin, right? He basically loses everything because he thinks Devin is the answer. We know he's wrong, but again, that's who Maul's character is. He has to be wrong. So to not only give us that moment, but to give us the depth of that moment, and then to also give us that moment and really make us believe, oh shit, is he about to change a little bit?
Yeah.
Really it's a testament to the writing, the art design, the sound design, the music, the writing. That is everybody working at God mode level, right? Just everybody doing the best that they can absolutely do. And I could not have been more pleased with something that I never wanted from Darth Maul. Like, I never expected to feel empathy for Darth Maul in that kind of way. And they did it with this, and it was outstanding.
Yeah. It's so well done. Like, the visions are so, like, effective in terms of you getting to see, like, what he was put through in the course of his training and what he sort of lost because he ended up on this path of a Sith. And then you're right, that sort of that ending, the ending where he sort of has that emotional moment and he talks about, like, not letting him, like, do this to anyone else again. Like, that almost, like, gestures to the point of, like, you know, we know he's on this path of revenge, and he keeps saying that that's what he wants, but then that's almost like that line almost sort of, like, gestures it, like teases, like, okay, maybe there's more than that below the surface, below the surface, and, like, it's not just about, like, getting back for what was done to him, but also stopping this from happening to other people. But then we also know it's not 100% that, because it's like, what does he end up by the end of the season? What does he end up doing to Devin? The same thing Sidious did to him, right? Like, he just falls, like, he is Darth Sidious's apprentice, and he cannot escape it, no matter how many times he's disowned. Like, he cannot get away from that, because he is playing the same playbook. And so, yeah, like, that's the ultimate tragedy of Darth Maul, is that, like, he cannot bring himself to escape what he was conditioned to do.
Yeah, and that's eventually, what sets him apart from, like, a Vader, right? Like, Vader becomes able, through the love of Luke, to be able to break that cycle. Maul doesn't know love because Sidious didn't know love, and so that's really, when you look at it, like, that's the difference between Maul and Vader in most regards. Is Vader knew love before becoming a Sith, and Maul never did, and so that's what makes the difference. So to have a moment here, just to kind of wrap this up, where you almost have Maul having a sense of love, self-love in that moment, where he apologizes to himself, where it's like, it gives you that glimmer of hope, and then it's like, no, he could never, he can't understand love. And that's really the thing that is going to ultimately be his downfall, and we knew this was coming, right? Because even in his dying moments in Obi-Wan's arms, he says, he's the chosen one, he will avenge us.
Yeah.
Right. It's always going to be about that with Maul. And so it's not any change that we saw, even though there is a slight change. There's the resolve of, I'm going to get revenge for myself versus I'm going to be preventative in my revenge, right? There's that twist. But it's really that moment of, you really got me to believe that this person was going to change, and then you took it away from me. It was Kylo Ren in The Last Jedi, where you go, oh God, we're getting the turn now, and then you don't. It's hard to do, because you have to build up the character to be a certain way where you both hate them and want the best for them at the same time, which is not an easy. It's a very fine line to toe, but they did it with Maul here, and it worked really, really well. So, any closing thoughts on Maul Shadow Lord so far?
No, I don't think so. Looking forward to season 2, whenever that comes.
Yeah. Well, according to Sam Witwer, they're already at work on it, and it's going to come faster than we expect. So I'm hoping 2027, 2028, we get season 2. I mean, I feel like by the time they make the announcement that it's been greenlit, they've already been working on it for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like, maybe this is our new May the 4th thing, is our final episodes of Shadow Lord, and then later that month in 2027, we're going to get Starfighter. So, I could get used to this, because like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, guys, our next episode will be our Mandalorian and Grogu preview episode. Vor's going to bow out on that one. He's got some prior obligations in the galaxy. So Mark is going to come on and join us for that episode.
Nice.
From Forever Star Wars. So that'll be a good time to have Mark on here. and we'll talk everything that we're looking forward to for Mando and Grogu. And then after that, we'll have a review episode of Mando and Grogu. So full of new Star Wars coming over the next month here. Of course, Lindsay and I, with summer coming up, can hopefully catch up on Don't Burn the Sacred Text. There's so many more books coming out. So you've got everything you need for Star Wars covered right here on the Clashing Sabers Network. So just make sure you hit that subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube right now, whether you're seeing this clip on social media, or you're on your podcatcher. Make sure you subscribe. One, it helps us see. We look at the numbers, we see where people listen and stuff like that. So it helps us make content that you guys want to see as well. But also, it just lets us know that you enjoy the show, and make sure you get all of our great content absolutely free. If you do have a little extra change though, and you want to help support our mission to put Star Wars books into classrooms across the country, head over to our Patreon and donate there and get some bonus episodes with Amanda. But if you can't do that, I'm going to say it again. The year's closing out. I'd love to start the next school year with a list of teachers to send books to. So we donate Star Wars books to classrooms. It costs you nothing but 2 minutes of your time. It costs the teacher nothing but a smile. We send them books. That's it. We send them books, put a smile on kids' faces. It's really easy. So go over to clashingsabers.net/nominated-teacher, and you can do that there. All those links are in the show notes per usual. Davor, if people want to hang out with you, talk to you about Maul Shadow Lord, or see the other great stuff that you're doing, where can they find you?
All right. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Blue Sky at Demondum. You can also listen to me as a co-host over on Space Swifties, a Star Wars and Taylor Swift podcast that I host with my wife, the one and only Meg Dow.
And in season 2 of Maul Shadow Lord, there's only one appearance that could top Vader and really make that season just peak cinema, peak Star Wars. And that's an appearance of Batch 8.
Hi-ho.
We got it. Got it in one, guys.
Yes.